Thank you. Actually, this is my first spoken word or talk at the fair, so nice to be here at Stewardship.
Kevin, it's unidirectional, so you have to speak right into it.
So,
real close, and probably stay on that side so you don't get feedback.
It should be fine.
kind of nice to be here at Stewardship, a place where we stew about things.
Get bossed around?
Yeah. So, like Glenn said, I'm the fair's arborist. As Tom said, I'm fair enough arborist. Getting the recognition I'm finally deserving. But I'm here to talk about the emerald ash borer, and thanks for taking time out of your day to sit down on some hay bales or have a little early dinner to talk about this really hard topic. It is a little bit of therapy to me because I've been dealing with it for almost a year now and trying to get the word out. But what we're gonna do is I'm gonna talk to you about what the ash borer is, then go into a little bit about ash trees themselves, the symptoms, how did it get here and how it spreads, and what we're gonna plan on doing with it here at the fair. So it's a new topic for us, but if you're at all from the Great Lakes area or the East Coast, they've been dealing with this for quite a while. So I'm going to give you the whirlwind tour of this. What it is the emerald ash borer. I actually tried to wear these glasses to highlight how pretty the beetle actually is. It's an emerald. That's its back, not that it wears emeralds on its legs. But it's a unique thing for a beetle to do, to be emerald. I looked into that a little bit. It's actually, there's two schools of thoughts of why there's a whole family of beetles that are emerald colored, and it's that metallic green emerald. And it's either, the schools of thought is it's either for hiding, because it resembles somewhat of a drop of water that's being reflected off of the sun, or possibly just for mating purposes, but they still don't know. Another interesting fact, my daughter's into theater, so I looked, there is actually the first sequin dress that was ever made was out of beetle wings, emerald, not the emerald ash, but in 1888, Evelyn Tyler, I think her name was doing a play. She was one of the best known actresses in the turn of the century, and she did Lady Macbeth in London, and she had a sequin dress that was made out of metallic emerald beetle wings, thousands of them on this dress, and it toured all around the world at that point, and was actually an iconic dress. Disney stole it from, I guess, Brave has a princess in it. It's the same design dress costume, and it's in a museum somewhere. But that's just how pretty this beetle is, but small and devastating. It's smaller than it can fit on a penny, and it's got black, just villainous eyes. But besides that, it's really pretty. It's a non-native, which means it came here from another country, or basically that our trees did not evolve with this species. It came from East Asia, and the ash tree is a novel host. It's not just being here in Oregon, it's been working its way across the United States, and it's like wildfire. It's not just getting Oregon white ash, but every species in the ash family that in the East Coast. It's been in 36 states and I think 6 provinces in Canada, at least 4 to 6 provinces. There are a lot of lookalikes. Once you start looking around, I've been here on site several times. Jennifer's holding up the lookalikes from, I think that's from Oregon Department of Agriculture. So we have a lot of native lookalikes, and it's really hard to tell the difference between them. But if you go to the website at Oregon Department of Agriculture and get that page, it would help you ID it or get close. if you do see it, it's best to take a photograph of it and try to get it out there somewhere. Talk to Oregon Department of Agriculture or the Invasive Species Council here in Oregon can answer questions. But or if you find one, you can collect it. It's best to put it in alcohol if you do collect it, or a freezer.
You gotta get kind of close.
Too close?
You can't be
Okay. So the adults of this beetle, the ones that you see in this picture, actually don't do the damage. It's the larvae that's in the tree. The adults actually do chew on some of the needles or the leaves, but it's not the thing that kills the tree. It's the larvae. And the larvae, it's pretty weird. They're much bigger than the adults. The adults emerge from ash trees in about May, so that's when they start flying. You see them. And their life cycle, they fly from May to June, July. It's sometimes in August, depending on the environment that they're in. And then at that point, the females start laying their eggs. They lay their eggs on the bark of the tree. And then once the eggs hatch, the larvae go into the tree and overwinter into the tree. And they actually burrow, and that's how they do the damage, is they do these S-shaped galleries in the tree, and that's what kills the tree. It basically girdles it. It starves it from all its nutrients and water transportation. And they overwinter in the tree, and then the cycle continues. Here in Oregon, sometimes it's a 2-year cycle, but that's areas where they have a really good winter. Here, we don't really have a winter, so that's really thought that it's going to be a 1-year life cycle. And they like stressed trees, so that they're really attracted to trees that are in stress. Healthy trees will last a lot longer, but they migrate right to a stressed tree. So what tree do they go to? They go to the ash trees. And there's lots of examples around here for the ash tree. It's very abundant in this site. I wrote an article in the Fair Family News in December. You can go see that and get more details. But in that article, I call it the backbone of the forest here. It is. There are thousands and thousands of ash trees here at the Oregon Country Fair. You can spot them. They're the only tree here with compound leaves. So they have leaves on each section of the stem. There's an example on the Kiss Your Ash Goodbye poster that's out and about. They're just everywhere. There's one there, that's an oak tree over there. Their bark is got kind of a crisscross on the grayish part of the bark, and they grow at about 60 to 80 feet tall. Here, they're really a special tree because they're a riparian tree. They love growing in crappy soil where other trees don't like to grow. The soil type is someone described it to me as a pond bottom soil. So you kind of imagine that. That's compact, muddy, it's wet multiple times a year. And here, there's just swales of them. They also call it ash swamps. They're so numerous in the wet areas. And the riparian zone loves them because it shades the area. And it keeps the water cool, and all the stuff in the rivers and the river's edges like that shade. This is the Oregon ash, and like I said, the emerald ash borer attacks pretty much everything in the ash family. Mountain ash is not actually in the ash family. People always ask me, that's a pretty important tree to a lot of people and for birds, but that's in the rose family, so that's one of the trees that doesn't attack. But there are several other species of ash that are in the cities, in the urban areas, and it's going to be quite devastating to cities like Eugene, Salem, and Portland. In Portland alone, they did a tree inventory, and there's 9,000 street trees in Portland. So how did it get here? Well, it arrived in the United States. It was first spotted in 2002 in Detroit, Michigan. And it came over on shipping containers from Asia, some provinces in China. And upon further study, they realized that actually that's when they spotted the beetle, was 2002, but it had actually been here since the 1990s. And like I said, the ash is a novel host, so the beetle just went right to it. And Michigan did a good job setting up a quarantine at first, and it slowed it down, but then it spread from there. But it's not as simple as an invasive species from Asia hitching a ride on some shipping containers and arriving in Detroit. Upon further study, the scientists found out that in the 1990s, they actually were shipping North American ash trees to China. And they established there, and through the 60s, they became quite numerous. They were using them for plantations and street trees. It's a fantastic street tree. It's really tough. It loves the urban environment. And then in around 1982, there was an outbreak of a lot of emerald ash borer. Before that time, it wasn't a very well-known species of insect. It was just a background insect for them too. But once we brought over the North American trees, that gave them a bigger food source, and they thrived. Another big outbreak was in the 90s. So it's pretty easy to connect those dots where big outbreak, pretty easy for a beetle to come over on a shipping container in the 90s. And it's a kind of a cautionary tale as we look into the future of invasive species and climate change here, because a conversation is assisted migration, is how assisted migration is helping trees go north as the climate changes. So there's a lot of talk of moving California trees up to Oregon and Oregon up. But there's a lot of unintended consequences when humans try to involve themselves in helping nature out. So it's further study needs to be done. There are some species of trees that we can help north, but it's not as simple as invasive species just arriving. Humans had a big part in this. So how does it spread? It arrived in Detroit. They put up a quarantine in Michigan, and within a few years, it spread to Ohio and Virginia pretty quick. So what happened was the federal quarantine, they locked down all the wood products, firewood and lumber and nurseries, but one nursery decided that it wasn't going to follow the rules and spread trees to Ohio and Virginia. And so quarantines are really a tough thing. It really helps putting up quarantines, but we really need cooperation of everybody and an educated populace for them to work a little bit better. Another way it spreads is through firewood. So pretty natural to imagine you're on a camping trip. I'm sure we've all done this. We brought wood from home, or bought it there at a place we were camping, and then crossed state lines with that firewood. So now the old school of thought was not to move firewood more than 50 miles or away from different climate zones. But now that they just, in the beginning of the year, they said, okay, let's slow it down to 10. Don't buy firewood more than 10 miles from where you burn it. And now they're trying to, they got a new slogan, is buy it where you burn it. So do not move firewood. And it's kind of like COVID that's a really good idea. It's making us more hygienic. It's not just the emerald ash borer that travels with firewood. There's all sorts of beetles that can be underneath the bark of the trees on all the species. And not only, there's funguses too that can travel that way. So here at the fair, we're trying to lock that up and stop the movement of firewood. What do we do? So once it spreads, it shows its symptoms are slow. When you finally do see its symptoms, they're very late. It's really late in the cycle of the beetle. It's been there a long time. By the time you see the first symptoms, you see is top-down dieback. You start seeing dead branches starting to decline from the very top of the tree. The beetles love the top of the tree first, and then when it gets more populated, come down the trunk of the tree. The second symptom that you see is epicormic shoots, or suckers from the base. The tree's deciding that it's going to abandon the top, and it still needs all those leaves and it needs to replace it, so it starts sending up suckers. So if you see a tree with a dead top and a lot of growth at the base, or even a little higher in the trunk, that's another sign. And then one of the final signs, another interesting sign is once there's a lot of beetles in it, woodpeckers start thriving. And one of the things they say, it turns it into a ghost tree, where the woodpeckers are working at the bark so much they flake the bark off the tree and change the color of the bark. So a lot of woodpecker activity is a sign. And then one of the final signs is the D-shaped exit holes. It's very unique for a beetle to have a D-shaped exit hole. And these beetles are prolific. It's now been in Oregon since just a little bit over a year. Arrived in June last year. It's in Forest Grove. There's now 44 trees that they've had to take down. About a month ago, I talked to one of the guys who took down the last 4 trees, and he showed me some pictures. And the beetles he's got 6 to 12 beetles on his back that he's just scraping off him and his trunk. So it's an insect that we're gonna see. There's a lot of other beetles that are around that have caused tree death. I've been dealing with Dutch elm disease for my whole career. It's a beetle that carries a fungus that kills all the elm trees. I've never seen that beetle. There's another beetle, bronze birch borer, that's recently killed all the birch trees, and I've never seen that beetle. Probably never will. But this emerald ash borer, we are going to see it. What can you do about it? Once what they've done in Forest Grove is the first thing they're doing is a tree inventory. They want to see how many trees they have. So they're doing a big inventory of all the trees in the city, and then there's a Tualatin River and a couple of natural areas right by there. So they're documenting all the trees. They're getting it on a website, a dashboard, and you can click on get that online. You can see it. I've got it on my phone right now. I look at it regularly, a little disturbingly too much. And it shows you all the trees that have been infected and they've taken down, all the suspect trees, and now they're showing all the trap trees that they've done, which is the next thing you do besides a tree inventory is create trap trees. Trap trees are where you girdle an ash tree. You actually take maybe about 2 feet of the bark off the tree all the way around the tree. Stresses the tree, actually kills the tree in the short term. But a stressed tree really attracts this beetle. Once in Forest Grove, what they've done is they've set up a bunch of trap trees and they've inoculated the trees around them and then hung traps. And so the idea is all the beetles will go to this one tree and then they'll sacrifice that tree in the winter once the beetle's overwintering in the tree, and try to eliminate some of the population that way. There is an injection that I mentioned. It's kind of a new pesticide that they're doing. So it's not a spray that you airborne it. You actually drill into the tree and inject the tree with this insecticide. It's expensive. It's a viable option in urban areas, and if you have a special tree at home that you want to save. They say it's pretty safe for the environment. I've been to one course about it. As far as all the other insecticides I've ever heard about, this is one of the safest. One of the dangers of injecting it into trees is that it goes into the pollen and can spread. But ash trees aren't a big pollinator. With insects and birds who love pollen, they'll go for the better pollen trees. So willow, prolific pollinator. Any tree with big flowers, that's a pollinator. Ash is not very showy and it's not a big pollinator. So there is some pretty good hope on using an injection with this tree. Also in the future, they're doing some studies on an RNA, which goes on to the cellular level of the beetle and could potentially just kill that beetle. And studies are just starting on that, and it's just a silver lining in the future. They're also doing infrared airplane flights for detection, because like I said, by the time we see it, it's been there a while. So it's hard to get rid of it once it's here in mass. So they fly planes over the area and bounce the color back, and they're trying to be able to tell the difference in color to see if the beetle's in the trees at that point, which would be brilliant to have in the arsenal. They're also doing a lot of study in trying to find trees that are resilient. You know, one of the problems is our trees don't have any defenses in it, and in talking about this tree, the mortality rate on ash trees has been almost 100%. Just a couple trees make it, and that's one of the reasons why they say you don't want to completely remove the food source, because there might be a tree or two around that is resistant to it, and then they plan on trying to populate that tree in the future. Hopefully they'll do that with Oregon ash. It's not a high-value tree, so that's going to be pretty far in the future. They have gone around and collected seeds for the future, and there's a place, Dorina, close by, a scientific nursery, and they collect seeds for future generations. So seeds from all around the Willamette Valley have been collected, so we don't lose the whole species in the future. So what is the fair doing at this point? It came out in June of last year. I first found out about it on Fair Monday as I was leaving. By August, we had a site visit with Oregon State University health scientists, two of them. Dr. Dave Shaw was here and did a full walk around trying to get us ready for what to do. Since then, the fair started a task force called the Emerald Ash Task Force that I co-chair with Glenn over there. And we meet monthly and report to the LUM Committee, the Land Use Management Planning. Land Use Management Planning. And so there's 2 meetings every month that talks about the Emerald Ash Borer. And we've talked to, had a couple of, one monthly meeting of the board of directors. We talked about the Emerald Ash Borer, and almost a quorum of board members were on site last month to walk around and talk about it. We also have started a tree inventory program, which is pretty exciting to me because it's the new age of tree inventories. We used to just do clipboards, write it down on a spreadsheet, go back to the computer and log in the details. My first time out here with the clipboard, it was in May and it was raining. And then handed the information to Rosanna Costello, and it's really hard to read those, my smudged handwriting. Since then, we've got a company called Tree Plotter has given the fair a tree inventory program, which only it gives to municipalities. So the fair is getting a head start on things, and we're doing aerial photos and tree inventories, which is coming up. So in the future, you're going to be able to look at a aerial map. There'll be stem points, so dots where every treetop is. You'll be able to click on that treetop. Once you click on it, you're going to get all the information about that tree, when it was inventory, what its health was, condition, height, and a couple of photographs. So one that's going to be a really important historical document to have. The fair has also gotten Oregon State University to come down 2 months ago, I think it was, and one of their scientists set up 3 trap trees here at the fair site. And this is the farthest south that they've done that to, because most of the activity is still up by Forest Road. So there's a tree down over by Maui, there's a tree by Tower Lot, and a tree at the far side that has been girdled. And there's some traps by there. And in the fall, we're going to go by there and see if there's any beetles there, and then destroy the tree. Besides that, we're in the process of making preparedness and response outline, and that's got a bunch of different categories, and we're passing it through all the committees and through the board, and hopefully some month in the future you'll be able to available to the public and be on the public website. Dennis Todd's done a fantastic job. He's part of Lump, and there's a website. Is it at Lump or Path Planning?
It's at Lump.
It's at Lump.
The poster's got it.
Okay, so if the fair family wants to know more about what the fair is doing and all the fair information, go to the Lump website, and it has all the details that you'd ever want to have about that insect on that site. Dennis has done a really good job. If you're here at the fair, we've got a bunch of posters up. There's the Kiss Your Ash Goodbye, which is the eye catcher, and then the other, is there one over there? Yeah. There's big ones here at Stewardship on the other side. It gives a ton of detail, the introductory detail about the ash. Besides that, that's our first year. It's education and awareness. It's really nice that you're here because that's one of the first things that we're going to need is to visualize what's going to happen here, to educate ourselves, become a better populace, and manage ourselves as far as moving firewood. And right now it's still not against the regulations to bring in live edge wood, but maybe in the future that'll be a new regulation, because it's beautiful in the construction that happens at the fair to have that live edge where the bark's still on it, but that also, just like firewood, carries insects with it. And not just ash trees. If you're bringing live wood from like Douglas County over here, you may be bringing in beetles that aren't as prolific here. It's kind of confusing, because if you can have live edge wood if it was milled from site, and the fair does a ton of that. So it's a little tough to. It's going to take an educated populace to say, hey, no, I've got to build my booth, and I'm going to use local wood instead of getting it maybe from a brother in Douglas County. Their next steps this is going to cost a lot of money for the fair, and I don't know where that money is coming from. Hopefully in another month or two we're going to try to get a donation page set up so we can start planting trees. We've lost already a couple of tree planting seasons, and it's going to be such a valuable part of this response is to get these trees in the ground, get them started growing, because we've got somewhat of a honeymoon period right now, and we don't want to waste it. These trees, especially we're here in Xanadu right now, and all the ash, sorry to say, were planted by Steve Wiz, probably, I don't know how many years ago, but they're established trees, and he planted about 2,000 trees during his reign as site manager. You can see them as you go out in the parking lot. There's ash trees there, and a lot of Oregon white oak here. So the fair really needs to establish a tree planting plan and get started on getting as many trees in the ground as possible. With a tree inventory and educated populace, we should be off to a good start. It's going to be interesting though, because the fair, I'm still trying to figure out how the fair works, and if the fair is nimble enough to move as fast as this is going. So it comes down to how we're going to manage the beetle, or is the beetle going to manage us? So do we wait for our larger responses till we start seeing trees dying, or can we get ahead of it a little bit? It's going to be a pretty big problem, because the tree inventory isn't quite done yet, so we don't know exactly how many Oregon ash is, or if that's really important, but the best guess is thousands and thousands, like I said. Once those trees start dying, then there's going to be a waste stream of wood, and such a volume of wood. At first it'll be under quarantine, but we've got to come up with some really clever ways of what to do with that wood. And really right now the best thing to do with that wood is burn it. And there's couple of new burning incinerators. There's an air curtain incinerator that you can burn it, and the smoke that comes out of it is much better for air quality. And another one that if you burn it, it creates biochar. And trees do such a good job at sequestering carbon. It'd be really good for the fair to try to respect that and keep as much as the carbon in the trees as possible, and that's biochar, where we can keep it and put it back into the soil. The fair is going to have to start managing its forest. It says it manages its forests right now, but it's pretty passive. And so in the future, we're going to have to come up with some policies on management. And then there's a lot of effect it's going to have on the general population here, on the people, on the fair family, the people who have booths here, and the people who camp here. And we're going to have risk analysis done, because when the trees start dying, they become brittle really fast. So they say that arborists who have dealt with this tree, they say that if once the top is 20 to 30% dead, the tree starts to become brittle. So the wood it's interesting on how much you can use it. Hopefully there'll be some uses. You could turn it into lumber, chip it, firewood, bowls and spoons. Chopsticks, maybe. Lots of chopsticks. And I think that's about it. It's going to change here at the fair. It's going to be hard, fast change. But it's interesting. One of the things I've learned about is that the fair actually has a abnormal amount of ash trees on its property, because actually when white settlement started happening here, a lot of the burning, we've heard that the Willamette Valley used to burn pretty regularly, and with those fires it kept the ash trees out of the meadows. And so if you look at the vegetation maps there's a good one in 1850, there were hardly the amount of ash there is right now. So it's going to be hard for us, because there's ash swales in the forest right here behind us at Whitebird, on the other side of Miss Piggy's. That is almost entirely ash, and it's hard. It's that pond bottom water that I was talking about earlier. It doesn't have a lot of oxygen. It gets wet a lot. If anybody's been here in the winter, you know those areas where you can't walk pretty regularly without hip boots because the mud's so bad. So there's going to be areas in the fair that might have to go back to meadow, and that's going to be the natural part, and that's going to be a hard decision that we're going to make, whether we're going to try to fight and keep the things that we grew up with. You know, the fair is been pretty static for 50 years. Hasn't changed too much with forest management. And this is some of the further discussions we're going to have is where to replace, what to replace. There's some nice species that can replace ash. We're on the northern edge of black oak, and there's areas in Fern Ridge where the black oak is underwater for a big chunk of the season, and there are a couple of black oaks on the property. I think once the forest plan is done, we're going to do a forest plan, and we'll have natural areas. So define areas in the fair that we're going to do planting in will just be native plants, and maybe other areas where we could try some assisted migration if that's what we decide. But in areas that already are changed, if you go up by Alice's and Doug's Woods up there are like plum trees up there. A lot of species that through the years have been planted, and I think those areas would be good to experiment with what other trees could go in. Now the fair has a response line I just learned out, so you can give feedback to the Oregon Country Fair. There's online, I'm sure you can find it. I can show the camera should know. But if you have any thoughts or what your concerns are, it'd be great to contact the fair and tell them what you think the fair should do, because it's going to take all of us to be educated about it and have a group decision on how to move forward. I think that's my talk. Since my daughter's here, I can say I'm sorry I'm being the bearer of bad news, or the borer of bad news. Borer of bad news. Thanks for coming and taking this part of your fair and listening to this topic. And have a couple questions. Black oak tree is very close to the fair, so it's a record because it's of its diameter or height or combination of the two. I will look that up. There's a state registered of record trees, and that's very encouraging because there's not a lot of black oak here. Next question. Of a lot of this waste stream that I was talking about, all the trees start dying. Burning it is one of the best techniques to completely get rid of it. If you want to save the wood, you need to kiln dry it, which is like 140 degrees for, I'm going to say, 2 hours. So you kiln dry it or chip it. Chipping it's a little harder because the requirements for chipping it for emerald ash borer are less than 1 inch in 2 of its diameters. So if we've all seen wood chips, they're more, unless if the blades aren't sharp of the chipper, they're shreds. Very hard to chip it down to 1 inch. But yes, chipping is an option that will be used.